I was about to pull you, Rajiv.
Namaskar. Hey, good
And
morning.
I saw you green. I was about to pull you.
Excellent. So, Rajiv, good morning. So,
Good morning.
we were just about starting. You came at the right time.
Good.
Okay. So, just as a quick recap, folks, I think today we will go through Gautama's steps in his awakening path. But before we go through, so in the last two sessions, we kind of covered his motivation for embarking on this journey of noble quest, and subsequently his practice under two teachers, which gave him some additional insight, but did not really help him to reach his goal of Nibbana or Nirvana. And then his attempt of doing extreme asceticism with forceful control of mind, breath control, as well as fasting. And he figured these extreme measures are not really that helpful in reaching the goal that he is looking to reach. And then he comes back to the main path where actually he's very popular for his middle path as a teacher after he becomes Buddha. But this is where he realizes, when he was still in this Gautama stage and after asceticism, he realizes that extreme measures are not useful, and starts focusing on meditation as a practice to first build the concentration, and then later takes it to the next few levels. So what he discovers is in the meditation journey, there are three levels of concentration that one can realize when one is starting to go deeper in meditation, and one needs to overcome several obstructions. I mean, at least 9 of them is what is called out very clearly, and many of it, I'm sure all of us who have tried to practice meditation would have experienced. In fact, if not all of it, yeah. And then this 3 levels of concentration also is something like you start training your mind um, to become more and more concentrated first. That's what he goes through as the first 3 levels, and then subsequently he comes to the main path of awakening, where what he did is what we will discuss in today's session. So before we go forward with today's session, any comments or thoughts by anyone that we should discuss first before we go to today's content based on the earlier content?
Hi, Jai.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Jay, good morning.
Yeah. Hi, Samba. Hi, Manju.
Good
I'm
morning.
sorry, I did not join last week. I was not well. Record no, so
Okay.
yeah.
No problem, Jay. No problem. In fact, we have recorded the previous session also, just in case if you would like to explore further. And in
Yes.
any case, I just did a quick summary for our benefit.
Sure, Manju.
Okay. So then we continue with today's review of Gautama's experiments. Yeah. So what he finally realized is that to realize the happiness of Nibbana, one doesn't need to forego happiness as such. And therefore, he decided not to go through the painful route of asceticism, and rather be moderate in giving his mind and body some rest, and watching them not going overboard in terms of sensuality and unwholesome states is what he decided, and that is what he used as an approach for his meditation practices now. And what did he practice? Actually, uh, in his middle path here, with what is also documented in the early Buddhism texts, is that he used to nourish, after abandoning asceticism practices, he used to nourish his body with 1 time a day meal, which was kind of filling for him, which sustained his body to be nourished to a reasonable extent, and also gave his mind a little bit of calmness and helped him to go deeper in his concentration, and also not be overboarded with additional food causing any problem as such. And in his meditation practice, his practice was primarily focused on what Ravi discussed with all of us as Satipatana meditation, right? Or it's also synonym for Vipassana meditation, which is taught by few schools of thoughts which follow Buddha's core teachings. Whether they call themselves as religious or not doesn't matter. But coming to this Satipatthana meditation itself, I have put in a couple of pictures here. You may not, again, we don't need to go in depth because my intent, at least in this session, was not to cover his core teaching to a large extent because some of it, many of it is all so well documented. At least I thought if any of us are going to use this as some kind of a reflection point, we can have a quick look at what this Satipatthana contemplation all about, what he practiced in this meditation as well. And essentially, it covers these four elements: body, feelings, mind, and dhammas. And what he covered in each of these meditation contemplations is something that are listed quite nicely here as well. Okay, and the depth of it is what we discussed already in the Satipatthana discussion from Ravi. So now, with this strong determination, now he starts practicing this Satipatthana elements, or the Satipatthanas, the four Satipatthanas as they are called. Okay, and he kept having very strong focus on his end goal, which is to, which was his motivation, right? And that used to help him to be very determined in each of his meditation sessions. So now, and subsequently, as he went deeper and deeper in his practices, he actually goes through what are called as 4 levels of absorption, which has kind of a combination of joy and happiness that comes at different stages, leading all the way up to deep equanimity. So the 4 stages of absorption, what are called out, that he goes through to reach his awakening, after those 3 levels of concentration were, in the first level of absorption, there was a joy, some kind of emotional feelings, and happiness, some kind of contentment of being secluded, or joy and happiness of seclusion. Here, the word seclusion need not necessarily be equated only to his being in, let's say, a forest and actually going through these practices. That is not the only way of interpreting this seclusion. In fact, from Gautama's viewpoint and from Analoya's viewpoint, the better way of interpreting this seclusion is seclusion from sensuality and unwholesome states, actually. That is, none of the 5 or the 6 or the 5 senses, physical senses, and one mind as a sense, he was letting it go or astray. And since he was and being, let's say, smooth both bodily and mentally, with the deeper level of concentration, resulted in this joy and happiness first. And the second level again is a joy and happiness of being able to reach the highest levels of concentration, is what he could achieve without, let's say, having to put extreme focused effort, right? So in the earlier session, we discussed about to build the concentration, he had to actually make sure his awareness and whatever object is contemplating is sustained through lots of effort, right? Here, he kind of reaches this smooth flow state of, without having to explicitly put a lot of effort, this joy and happiness continues to stay for much longer period, perhaps across, let's say, several hours and days also where necessary, right? And then the third level is a state of absorption which is called as happiness devoid of joy. So here again, this is my understanding. At least I found some of this description from Analayo not fully clear to me at this point in time. That could be because one needs to experience this to really understand what he is trying to say, or maybe to really understand the words, or I need to find some other better description to really understand, at least intellectually. But for me, this third level, the way I understood this is, joy is where there is some kind of emotional senses that you're feeling, that also goes away. And happiness, which is a lot more closer to contentment, the natural state of being content, is a state that you tend to reach. And then in this state, there is your efforts are extremely minimal. And this is something that Buddha called out as part of the Satipatana contemplations, where you should be diligent, aware, and some of these keywords, what was used, they all require no longer lot of effort. And that tends to happen very smoothly, like as though your car, that is yourself, is in the fifth gear mode. So where it simply keeps running without you having to incur a lot of effort. And then comes the next level, which is deep equanimity. So where you even forgo any kind of even that minimal attachment to even happiness. So you just stay there. So which is what is called as the fourth level of the absorption, as per my understanding. Okay. So now Buddha starts reaching one after another level of this four absorptions, and as he goes through this, at least he also gets two higher knowledges. And according to Analayo's research, and also was later documented or experienced by many other people who reached awakening. And in Buddhism literature, people who reached awakening after Buddha, thanks to his teaching, are all called as arhats or arhats, right? And many of them did not gain these higher knowledges 1 and 2, or some of them got higher knowledge 1, some of them got higher knowledge 2 also, and some of them got some other additional powers, but those are all more like a byproduct rather than the focus of this whole awakening journey. Therefore, let's not delve too much into those aspects. Rather, any person who is focused on this meditation and the path of Buddha should experience at least this higher knowledge 3. But before we go to this higher knowledge 3, let's take a quick look at what happened to Buddha with respect to this higher knowledge 1 and higher knowledge 2, and how it helped him to really help preferably himself and then others. So first thing, when his meditation practices became deeper and deeper, and he started scaling these absorption levels, the first thing that happened to him is this higher knowledge 1, which is recollection of his own past lives. Okay, and if you really see this recollection, at least in Buddhism, before Gautama, there was another Buddha called as Vipassin. He never got this recollection. At least that is what it is called out. Okay. So now, from from Gautama's viewpoint, this recollection of past lives is documented something like this in the Buddhist literature as part of his discourses later. So this is his own words in one of his discourses, where he says that as part of this higher knowledge, I recollected my past life experiences. This is Buddha's own words when he was still Gautama, right? And he recollected something like this: 1 birth, 2 births, 10 births, 30 births, 100 births, 1000 births, eons of arising and dissolution in all their details. I formerly was born there with such a given name, such a family name, eating food like this, experiencing pleasure and pain like this, passing away from there, I was reborn here, dying here, I was reborn there. From beginning to end, I completely understood its causes and conditions. So this is documented in the Buddhist literature as part of Buddha's discourses. Okay, and if you really take a closer look at this, this is nothing but a summary of the dependent arising teaching, which clearly made him to become dispassionate towards his sense of identity or self. So he realized that he's been going in this circle of birth and death and all experiences so many times, innumerable times. And therefore, he concluded that this is all happening interdependently, and there is a very nice 12-link step that he calls out further, which I will show you in a minute. But the key point here is Buddha or Gautama actually recollected 91 such eons, right? So here, I think we discussed this also earlier. Eon, as per Buddhism, it's a very long time span, which kind of each span of time is some maybe a few hundred years. And he actually says, Gautama says that he recollected 91 such eons of time period worth of previous lives. And he saw that he had experienced all possible kinds of lives. So not just as a human being, but as many different types of animals and fairies and devas. And still he could not discover a beginning point of this circle of life. And hence he actually in his teaching, he never explicitly said there is a God. All that he said is there is no self, right? And that is also a result of this higher knowledge 1 and also higher knowledge 2. Okay, so this, am I so far clear? Any quick comments or question by anybody?
It's clear, Manju.
It's clear.
Okay, so then his second higher knowledge, what he got as he kept going deeper, is what is called as a divine eye. But that is the term which is used. But in reality, it is something like he could not just see his own lives, he could also see the lives of several other living beings. And they were also going through the same kind of cycle, right? So when he recollected his own life, it was not just like a black and white picture where only his things were visible and not the others. Actually, as part of his recollection, he saw that even others are going through the same kind of cycle of being born, being dying, and then taking another birth. And essentially, that made him to realize this karma. And that is where in Buddha's teaching later, reincarnation and karma, they are so interlinked. And he also comes into the conclusion that there is a very interesting point about karma, that some people who had in their life did some good experiences, later they seem to be taking some better lives, which kind of help them to accumulate the positivity further and further. And as part of this recollection, he also saw some people who were going through some bad experiences or doing some negativity towards others. They took subsequent births, which were again accumulating their past impact, is something that he saw. And that is what made him to teach about karma as part of his teaching later, right? And Jataka tales actually, as we discussed, kind of documents some 550 plus such past life experience of Buddha, where there is an interplay of several people in that current life, and how they were behaving in the past life kind of continued. That we can notice when we see several of these Jataka tales as well. Okay, so with that, okay, so was there a question or a comment?
Yes, Joe, there was just a comment or a clarification. In the second knowledge part that you mentioned about karma,
Yeah.
I had a clarification because when all creation began, or when the soul took the first birth, let us say, I mean, just a hypothetical situation, there was no karma for that soul, right? Or whatever. And then why did it take birth in the first place? If initial, let us take whatever eons and all that. See, karma starts at some point in time, but then why did the first birth or whatever, first incarnation or whatever happened? Because initially, first time, there would be no karma, right?
Right. So
then
at
why
least,
did it happen?
yeah, sure. I got the question. And in fact, this
Is
question
there
was
any
posed,
explanation for that kind of thing? Anyway.
in fact, this question was posed to Gautama Buddha several times. Either on in some discourse period or in some kind of, I mean, during his lifetime, he participated in several discussions also, something like a panel discussion. So what we nowadays call as panel discussion, where some 3-4 experts come, they discuss a topic, that kind of things happened even during his lifetime, and he participated in some of those discussions as an expert, while there were other experts who believed in Vedas or in other schools of thought and who participated. And whenever this question, what you just now asked, was asked to him, his answer was never direct. He never chose to answer this question. So for him, this soul or the beginning, he simply could not find through his own experiences, right? So that is what he called out. He went almost like 91 eons ago, and he only saw this circle repeating again and again and again for himself and for others. So there was absolutely no beginning that he could find. So which is why he never commented on some let's say intellectual point which was not based on his experience. That is why he never said anything about God. He never said anything about soul, or rather he said there is no self, because he went so much past and he still could not find anything. So that is what my understanding based on the materials that I could gather. Ravi or anybody else, would you like to add anything further to this question here?
Yeah,
Actually, I did not get any place where anyone has answered this, so I don't have an answer.
Sure. And Jay, you also wanted to say something?
yeah, like similar to you only. Like there's no direct answer, but there are some explanations, parallel explanations that have been given. Not in the sense of the soul or something. What they say is that when you draw a parallel to evolution, right? So it is if you see in our Dashavataras, there is an evolution that is going on. Like the first, like how the avatars were from fish to mammal, reptile, and all those things, right? So and the last avatar of Vishnu is the most enlightened one. In the similar manner, what they say in Satyaloka, for the very first time, there was actually no karma. Like everyone was born pure, and as things went on, there was one in evolution. They said that all organisms were same in the beginning, but one mutation caused everything to change completely. But that happens very gradually over millions of years, right? So there were all single-celled organisms, and one organism chose to do something differently randomly, and that started giving birth to complex organisms. In the similar manner, everyone there is a theory that everything was born pure, but one person tried to go in a different manner, and the reason for them, they are telling, is that is the origin of attachment. And again, going back to Gita, attachment leads to desire leads to anger, and that is the birthplace of all those karmas that start. So
Okay.
everything was pure in the beginning. This is the one school of thought, that everything was pure at the beginning, but one soul or one person uh, tried to do something different, and leading to origins of attachment and subsequent karmas being developed.
See,
Fair
one
enough.
more thought I have, Manju, is see, I strongly subscribe to a concept of no self. See, when there is no self, there is no individual who does karma. Okay, it's in the flow where everything is connected, and it keeps happening. It is not that there's see, I do karma is the whole, that thought of me doing karma is the problem. It's like karma philosophy is, see, karma philosophy is different from self. See,
Correct.
the concept of self says I do something. The concept of karma says if X happens, it leads to Y. If Y happens, it leads to Z. That is karma philosophy, which Buddha also subscribes to, or recommend, whatever he says
Correct.
that. But there is no individual who does karma A and enjoys, does karma X, enjoys the consequence Y, enjoys the consequence Z. That is not there. Okay.
Correct.
Sadhguru's video is there. I don't know whether I've shared it earlier or not. Manju, with you, I guess I shared. You are an act, not an actor.
Correct.
There is if you search for that, you get it. But it's a long video where he has added masala, all those things, and It's a 1 hour plus video, but it's worth listening because in between he actually says same thing as no self, and he says X happens leads to Y happens leads to Z. That is what is karma philosophy.
Excellent point. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Ravi. Okay, so with the thought, maybe we can take up this discussion.
Yeah, this is a topic separately, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But at least since we are focusing on Gautama and Buddha, let's understand his view and his approach. And Ravi kind of nicely called out the difference between karma has seen in maybe other schools of thought versus Gautama Buddha so nicely.
Yeah, thanks. It helps.
Yeah. So then, after those two higher knowledges, then comes um, he gets this third higher knowledge, which is called as the removal of the influxes with respect to sensuality, existence itself, and the ignorance which clouds our view about existence and sensuality. So for this, here comes his key insight. That is, after he started experiencing these 4 levels of absorption and got these higher knowledges, he gained a penetrative insight into the 5 aggregates of clinging and their dependent arising, which leads to dukkha being unsatisfactoriness, okay, and not sadness, rather unsatisfactoriness. So now what does it mean here is this higher knowledge number 3. So let me also show you this summary. So the way he interprets this dukkha and the way he interprets these 3 removal of influxes is so nice. So which is why I tried to summarize this, both, let's say, the understanding as is, and later when Gautama became Buddha and started teaching, he used in his teaching for these 4 noble truths, as they are called as, a medical analogy that existed or was popular in Indian times during his life. That during his ancient times, the medical analogy used to look at certain disease and certain cause for it, and what can make you healthy from the disease. I mean, when you become healthy, what would be your state, and what is the cure that will take you towards this health, is kind of a structure that was quite popular, it seems, in ancient India. And his teaching, if you really see, that is Buddha's 4 noble truths, he kind of packaged it in similar way. But to leading to it was this third higher knowledge, which was removal of these influxes, right? So what this basically means is, be it sensual desire, be it the knowledge or the understanding of existence as no self, or the ignorance around these aspects, and we going through the miseries. So he said there is a cause for their arising, which is primarily ignorance, and the result of their arising is this bondage to ignorance in terms of continuous experience of good and bad realms of existence. So amongst animals, hungry ghosts, heaven, hell, human beings, whatever. So this, again, think about this point using the thought that Ravi shared, karma philosophy being different from the karma act, being different from actor. And then the third aspect, which is cessation or eradication of these influxes, requires eradication of ignorance or understanding about this cycle. Then comes the path to the cessation, which is, he calls out them as the noble eightfold path or the middle path, where there are 8 elements that are called out. Again, going deep into this was not my intent, but in summary, obviously we can do search to figure out what these noble eightfold path is, or we can also do a specific session focused on this later. But this noble eightfold path talks about 8 aspects of living. And if one is living with these 8 elements put in place correctly, then eventually one would achieve awakening and continues to lead a life of holiness, is what the summary of these 3 influxes or the higher knowledge is. Now, from Buddha's viewpoint, he realized this, and he also realized that when he could get rid of these influxes, he also reflected on the 7 factors that helped him to cultivate this, which is again called out explicitly, which I have also listed just as a reference point for us. What really helps? We already discussed many of this in our discussion so far. Okay, but the key point here is when not just intellectually, but through experience, your own experience, you get rid of this ignorance fully in terms of attachments, craving, and inflexes, then that state is what Gautama called as the awakened state or Nibbana state. Okay, and this, if one has to summarize, again, thanks to Analayo, the summary is basically these 4 Satipathanas and their insights. Here, I kind of took this table from Analayo's Satipatthana book and put it here. So he realized, in summary, that these 5 aggregates of clinging, the body form, the feelings or the consciousness, and our cognition of these feelings, and our volition or reaction or action that leads to taking something about, doing something about this feeling. These are all the 5 aggregates of clinging. And if you have to correlate what kind of insight one gets when one starts getting rid of these aggregates, is something like this. That is, you get rid of this material form attachment, you kind of understand the absence of beauty. There is technically no beauty per se in any kind of body, is something that you would realize. And when you get rid of,
just a correction.
Sure.
Just a correction. What I felt is,
sure.
see, what he said in Analaya, what he said was, it's not get rid of it. Rather, when you start observing, observing that, you will get this insight. I mean, you will never get rid of it, but that's when you do Satipatthana of each of them, the insight what you get is whatever you specified below. Perfect. Makes sense. Yeah, perfect. Get rid is not that these are never going to go anywhere. Actually, yeah. So they will keep happening, but the way you deal with them, so it is by losing your attachment to the self altogether, right? So you understand and you move forward with that insight. Thanks, Ravi. So,
is it more to do with internalizing and understanding the self more in these parameters, so that you will be having a better insight of those particular things?
So you will internalize these parameters to realize that there is no self, right?
Correct.
So that means there is no body.
Exactly.
And therefore there is no beauty.
Yeah.
So, and whatever feelings happen, they just keep happening. The experience keeps flowing. Okay. And they keep changing continuously, right? So
yeah, and it helps you to grow in that intellectual or spiritual thing. Okay.
Correct. So at least just as a simple summary, at least for me, when we realize that these feelings keep happening by themselves, so we also realize their unsatisfactoriness ultimately. And when we also see that mind is continuously running the thoughts, then we kind of realize the impermanence of the life itself. And when we also get the insight of cognition and volition, that is our perception and reaction causes the next experience. So we also realize if we don't do much about any of this, either cognition or volition, then there is no self that comes into play, or we reach this anatta state, anatta insight. So those are some summary. Again, these are few things that from Gautama's viewpoint, these were not intellectual points. These are things to be experienced by oneself, and therefore he recommended all his disciples or all people who started following his teaching to continuously practice it in their daily lives and strive to be having their life what he called as a holy life, which is you live every moment keeping these insights in everything that one does, right? So, and which is what he also did after awakening. But also there is one interesting aspect. Though this awakening gave him this insight, firmly established and guided him with everything that he did later, he still ended up actually spending 7 more days after his awakening, and that's a lot of time for him. Okay, so unlike us, he is awakened, and after that he spends 7 days reviewing this content or this understanding much more closely, and he kind of understands or calls out this 12 links of dependent arising very clearly. He understands this 12 links of dependent arising, and that is also called as patika samupada or wheel of life. And that is why you might have noticed in if you visit any Buddhist temples, you see there will be some bells hanging outside, some 12 bells hanging outside, or the wheels, 12 wheels that you can turn. So, and that kind of is an indication of this 12 links of existence, which creates this whole dukkha. And one who realizes that strives to work and break these links, these 12 links, in his own way or her own way. So, and again, I have summarized these 12 links for our quick reference here, and it goes something like this. So, because this exists, that exists. Because of the arising of this, that arises. So, this is very similar to subject and object, or the you are that, or the Tattvamasi concept, right? But in Buddha's teaching, he kind of explicitly calls out the 12 steps that kind of creates this link, which is something like this. When we are conditioned by our ignorance, we see various kinds of formations, both bodily and mentally. And that we is nothing but the consciousness, which creates this formations and results in this consciousness towards these formations. And that results in this name and form for them, and results in some 6 sense spheres based experiences for us. And when we are conditioned by the 6 sense spheres, we tend to get in contact and feeling, craving, clinging, and becoming something, right? And that takes us on this journey of birth, old age, disease, death, worry, sorrow, vexation, and pain. So this kind of 12 links kind of gets established. And this is why the life keeps happening for all of us, and the only way to get out of this circle is what Buddha calls to overcome our ignorance completely about attachments, craving, and influxes, and just be observers as the life keeps happening, as the experience keeps happening, rather than reacting to it, is something that he calls out. And for that, he ended up taking 7 more days to articulate his own thoughts, or clearly form it in a way where he could help others to understand as well. So now there is one additional. Oh, okay. I see some hand. Rajiv, you have raised a hand. Okay, let me pause a bit. So, was there a question by anyone or comment, Rajiv or any others?
You complete, Manju, then we'll discuss.
Okay, so then the thought that he shares here, no, is this. So reaching this state, this awakening state, can be done by adopting this middle path, which is what he continued to practice throughout his life of 45 years or so after awakening, where he was not just teaching others to follow this eightfold path, he himself was leading that. And more importantly, he kept practicing meditation on a daily basis for many years. And sometimes he used to go into complete seclusion for a couple of months, 2 to 3 months or so, and practice the Satipatana, using a breathing technique, which I also shared with you folks with the 16 steps, right? And that is something that he kept practicing all through his life, right? And the middle path, whatever he taught, at least I created this picture for my own understanding. That is, we need to find a balance between sensuality and asceticism, and both lead to dukkha or unsatisfactoriness. So we need to watch out how we are experiencing and how we are interacting with various aspects of our life, and keep our focus or our experiences to be on the middle path with no extreme reactions, which eventually leads us to continuously being able to be aware of the whole life experience or the whole existence that as it happens. And when one is being able to be in that middle state continuously, that is nothing but liberation or nirvana. So that is a way I understood the middle path, and which is what I believe Buddha also wanted us to practice. And let me just see, was there anything else that I wanted to cover? Otherwise, from my viewpoint, at least the core experience of his, that is Gautama to Buddha, I was more focused about all the way up to this point. So there is, of course, there is a little bit more material, which I also saw about how we face his own death. And he, of course, did, at least as per the Buddhist literature, he did some miracles and all, but that was not of my so much interest. I can share about that, but that was not my primary intent. But finally, until the day he passes, he pretty much lived this middle path, and he pretty much practiced meditation, was something that is documented and called out also explicitly. So that's primarily what I wanted to share. And of course, there are few points. I can quickly show those reflection points also, but before I do that, any quick comments or thoughts by anyone to whatever we discussed so far? Anything that needs a bit more discussion at this point in time?
Manju, just one relook at that balance that you have shown, right?
Yeah.
In that, asceticism is associated with self-tormenting. Why is that? I mean, is asceticism a torment?
See, the asceticism basically is what you are making either your body or mind go through some extreme experiments, right? So we discussed this as part of Buddha's view about the asceticism. He tried to do forceful control of the mind, forceful control of breath, and forceful control of body through fasting. So for him, all those will not lead to this true happiness of liberation. Rather, they only cause dukkha.
Okay. Okay.
The way I see it, see, since he practiced too much of everything, so that is how the middle path came into the consciousness, I guess, because he experienced the extremities in all the paths that he took, and then he felt that nothing is giving the result. So that's why they say, no, anything too much is too bad. So always go in the moderation. I think that is what the key message is.
Exactly. And that is why he never said you should fast for 3 days continuously. He actually told all his monks to actually eat at least one meal properly every day. And in fact, it is also documented that when there were some monks who misunderstood that eating one meal, assuming I need to go on a fasting, and who was eating very less, they were scolded by Buddha actually. And they were asked to eat a bit more rather than go towards asceticism or starving, is something that is also documented in the early Buddhist literature. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. It makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So any other question or comment? Raji, you also had your hand raised. So
yeah. So,
you should take
I just wanted to dwell a little bit more on this no self part. So, from whatever I heard now, because of the different, what we call janmas or different births we take. So is it because of that aspect that Buddha comes to the point that we cannot associate um, permanently to a self, and therefore he points out that there is no permanent self in terms of mind, body, and because it is permanent, impermanent, and it keeps changing birth after birth. Is it because of that the conclusion is no self, or in its literal sense there is no self? Because it's the first time I'm hearing this, and that is where I wanted to,
So look at this summary which exists in the Buddhist discourse. So where he talks about, he recollected his many past life experiences, right? And here, if you take a closer look at this, there are 2-3 parts in this. First part is that he explored thousands of births going across eons of arising and dissolution.
Correct.
In all their details. This is first part. And second part is where he says, okay, there is a I here. Okay?
There is I
farmer,
yes.
Yeah, because he has to use a language which can be seen or appreciated by others, right? He has to speak. But then, if you really look at the Buddhist literature, no, after his awakening, lot of times when he was speaking about his own experience or himself, he spoke as if in a third person. Tathagata was experiencing that. Is the way he used to call himself and state also. Okay. So, but then in some places still this kind of a statement exists, maybe because people who documented it put it in a way which makes a little bit easier to understand. But the second part here key is, after this I, what comes? That is, I formerly was, from here onwards, see, I was born there. I was given such a name, such a family name. I was eating food like this. I was experiencing pleasure and pain like this. And all this kept changing. So then the question comes, what is I here? Name is changing, body is changing, what I eat is changing, the people that I are associated, they are changing, and I'm going through pleasure and pain, which are again keeping on changing. Right? So there was no, and this experience was continuing from one to another continuously. So there was nothing which was concrete as such. So that is why he concluded there is no self. The experiences keep happening. The act of experiences keep happening. And there is no specific entity which you could call as a self. And that is why he decided to come to the state of no self, is my understanding. Ravi, would you like to add anything further here?
Yeah.
The negation part of it, right? Ravi, allow me for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
The negation part of it, right? To negate something, which logically also means that there should be something which you're negating, right? So when you say no self, I can understand it. I can understand that you could negate the permanence of body, permanence of mind, permanence of thoughts. Can you negate Can you negate the existence of experience? You can't negate experience, right? That is where I was a little confused.
Correct.
Are you saying experience is false?
Correct. See, experience is not false. The experiencer is false. See, that is the whole thing. There is a small verse called Bahiya Sutta, in which Buddha said to one person called Bahiya. Manju, can you just Google that and open Bahiya Sutta if you are?
Yeah.
Or if it is a different discussion, we can take it later.
No, it is related. It is related.
Can you open anyhow? Or you go to image. I think image will have.
Okay.
I generally do that.
Okay, let's see.
It's this one, right bottom.
This one, right?
This one you open. Okay. Can you open it fully?
Yeah.
See, what it says, Rajiv, is, see, when you see something, okay, only what is seen is there. There is no seer. Okay. When you hear something, only what is heard is there. There is no person who listens to it. See, any experience, we associate an experiencer. If I see something, there is a thought that comes in me, or that there is an experiencer, that I am seeing something. What it says is, there is only seen, there is no seer. Similarly, there is only heard, there is no person who hears it. There is only taste, there is no person who tastes it. Similarly, there is only thought, there is no thinker. So experiences arises, passes. Experience is what? There are six combination of inputs that causes an experience, right? Here, you hear, you feel, you taste, you whatever, that five thing plus thought. This combination is an experience for us at any point in time, and only experience exists. There is no experiencer, but we have a constant feeling that there is one constant experiences throughout our life, right? That experiencer doesn't exist is what, that experiencer who we think that is, who is existing constantly, is what we associate as self, or I exist. What he says is, you don't exist. Okay. What exists is, there is body, there is body is also experienced, it's not an experiencer. There is body, there is mind, there is whatever outside input coming in, combination, all those things. This flow keeps happening. There is no common entity across who experiences this throughout. That's what no self means, which we strongly believe in. That I existed yesterday, I am going to exist tomorrow. And our entire work is to satisfy that I, and I want to become something, I want to do something. So this is what is the illusion of self that we have, which is what he is negating.
Yeah.
So the happiness which Manju was showing, the states happiness and joy.
Yeah.
Uh, happiness. So finally, it also came down to the point where there is happiness but without joy. So
And
are we saying that experience exists and Buddha did not experience that happiness without joy?
no, if you stop only up to this third level, then that I was still there, Rajiv. That is why you should not ignore this fourth level, deep equanimity. And you need to reach this deep equanimity where you can let go yourself with that experience also. When there is no I only existing about even that experience, that is when you reach this fourth level. And after that, subsequently, you reach this awakening state. So the steps is flowing that way, right? So all the way up to the 3 levels of concentration and even 3 levels of absorption, you probably still have that some loose connection with I or the experiencer. And you keep making it looser and looser. And then finally, when you let go that I completely, or reach that anatta or the no self state, that is when you reach this fourth level of absorption, kind of, is my understanding.
See, there are a lot of good talks by Alan Watts, okay, who is a strong.
Yeah, I've seen.
He talks about this. I mean, he may explain it better than what we are explaining. Or there are, if you just say no self in Google, there are a lot of things that comes out, which explains what it really means.
Right.
So
Can you
apart from
compare and contrast, Ravi, no self versus tradition in Hinduism, which says self, but the self is completely dependent, and then it doesn't have any power of its own. The only reason the self exists is because of the independent self called God. So,
okay.
in a
So
way, are they not related? Only
are they
thing is
connected? They are
yeah.
connected. I see. There are two things. It's like You think of space. There is a space and there is a planet which you see in the space. So we call planet as something. Okay. When you remove planet, what is there? There is, you can say two things, right? One is one word you can use is there is nothing, or one word use this, there is an infinity. Okay. So what actually both Hinduism and Buddhism explains same thing, but what it says is when you what is that planet, what I was referring is all these objects, right? Objects is experiences. When you remove all those things, there is nothing, is what Buddha said. What Hinduism said is there is Brahman, which is infinite, everything. But end of the day, it's same. But I personally prefer nothingness, because we cannot perceive infinite. The moment I say we say we are something, I still project this body as I. See, when I say Aham Brahmasmi, I don't get rid of I of this body, but somehow I keep this I, this mind, and project it to something infinite, and I feel I am great. So that's why the word nothingness is more relevant. If you instead of saying I am infinite, I am nothing, is more effective. Is what I felt. That's why I somehow, because I read all those things earlier, it is same. The truth is same, but the whole thing is that only strengthens the ego. If you look at why many people misused our scripture is all these so-called Pitadipatis, all those things kept on telling I am Brahmasmi, and kept on doing dwelling in the body and doing whatever they wanted. Okay. So, but the moment you say I am nothing, then you can't do much. Okay. It's like you have to go closer to the truth. But both are same, but the words are different.
Thanks.
Ravi, just one point on the last sentence that you mentioned, that realization that one is nothing leads to being not responsible, right? Not being responsible, not being owning or anything, right? So how does
I
that
think that is where
begin?
India went to.
Exactly. That's what it is. See, there is no single entity responsible for this. Okay. It is mind which comes and goes, and everything is related, right? See, you get inputs, which is not, you are not responsible. You means, I'm telling, which is apart from body,
Yeah.
mind, experience, all those things. There is no that you responsible for that input. Now let's take, okay, input comes. Now there is some feeling happens in you. Okay. Then you are not responsible. There is no you who is responsible for that feeling. Now, because of that feeling, it raises thoughts. Okay. For example, you see some crime in the road. Okay. You see it. There is no option for you. It's a choiceless seeing, and then it may create a fear or anger, whatever in you. Again, that is not in your control. That gives rise to thoughts of, say, either preventing it or whatever it is. It's all connected. One leads to another. There is no you inside it who has a choice of of saying that, okay, I will have this control over life. Only thing is a mind. There are multiple things happens in the mind. When mind is in sync with the action, we call that willpower. It's just a name that we have given to that combination. In reality, there is no free will. If my thought comes, I should jog every day, and my body ends up in jogging, then I say I have good willpower. But there is no I who controls that willpower. But that attribute of mind is what we are calling willpower. But unfortunately, we think that is me and say that, okay, I am controlling this entire action of mine. There is nothing like that.
But somewhere there has to be an intention, right? Somewhere that intention, somewhere it arises, right?
So,
Correct.
Akhilesh,
That intention is also a content of mind.
so in fact, if I could just add there, Ravi, in fact, Gautama Buddha's life itself has an answer to what Atresh asked, I believe. See, for example, or rather not example, if you look at Gautama when he became Buddha, after that awakening, he realized there is no self, correct? So if there is no self, what was the reason which made him to go and start teaching about this to so many other people when none of them existed? Right? So he could have said, okay, I don't exist, nobody else exists, only experience exists, so therefore there is no need for me to do anything. I will go sit in a corner. And he could have done that. Correct? So
No.
if he was irresponsible, let me just complete my thought.
Yeah, complete.
Okay. So rather, when actually, at least in early Buddhism text, it's also called out in the discourses. And as per Analayo again, Buddha actually does this reflection. Should I really go and teach this? Should I really go and share with all the other beings? Is something that he reflects. And finally, he decides out of compassion that experiencer not there should be reached, should be shared with as many people as I can, so that we all collectively realize that there is no experiencer as such in the world, and we kind of as long as this body, whatever is materialized and being experienced, we can experience in a more awakened way, is what I think he concluded, is what Analayo says. And he took the path of teaching because of that. And this, for me, appeared very similar to what Krishna teaches Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. That is, you just because Krishna is Krishna, he cannot sit in one corner. Rather, he still needs to do what he needs to do. So both seemed very similar to me, at least that is my understanding. Ravi, you want to add something more?
Nothing. I think you summarized it well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, Manju and Ravi. Thank you.
Yeah, this is where I think this, okay, we have already exceeded by 9 minutes. I'll just take 2-3 minutes to quickly summarize a couple of these points. I will share this entire PDF with you folks in case you would like to use and reflect further, and if you want to talk anything further also, that's fine. But 2-3 key points. This definition of what is a Buddha, I found it very, reflective. That Buddha is not a person, but somebody or something which is meditating, reflecting with unperturbed purity, invariably smiling, not at all angry, delighting in seclusion, seclusion not just physically, but from the sensuality and unwholesome states, fearless, highest attainment, and focusing on just essentials, is something I found very thought-provoking, first bit. And the 10 powers of a Tathagata, the person who is awakened, right? So one who knows. So these are few things that are listed here, which is kind of something that we discussed, most of these elements. And the 16 steps of mindful breathing, applying Satipatana in practice. The way Gautama did this meditation and the way Buddha taught people to do meditation is something, this 16 steps kind of combines 4 Satipatanas beautifully. And then meaning of karma, there is a small definition that I put in here. And also the 7 awakening factors that we would experience, or that will help us to reach this awakened state, is something that is shared here as well. Okay, so those were some of the thoughts, some of the key points I put in, just as a, let's say, each of those points by itself can be an object of contemplation, especially when we are going through our initial stages of meditation journey, is what I felt. So I have put in there, both for me to use, and if any of you also choose to go in that path, for you to also use. So let me pause. I am done.
Thank you, Manju. It was a real, a good thought compilation, and also you took us through the whole journey in a very interesting and involving way. And appreciate all your efforts for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Satvish.
As part of Analaya's PhD, he did something about Buddha. Looks like now Manju is doing his PhD about Analaya.
Uh,
No, it's quite detailed actually. It is. I don't know. I don't have to read the book. I think maybe.
But is Anulaya, I mean, the only person who has written about this, or are there
yeah,
multiple? I
oh,
am not.
several hundreds. In fact, he gives credit to lot of people in his research. Okay, and in fact, there are many people who have done this even before him. But he specializes in the early Buddhism. So he has used some of the contemporary writers as well as, but he has tried to focus on the early Buddhism content. But for me, more than Analayo, and the reason why I chose Analayo to go a little deeper is his connection to the early Buddhism. I was hoping to find as much purer version of what Buddha taught, rather than see anything over a period of time. No, keeps getting diluted. At least that has been my experience with many other things. So anything which is currently being taught, I feel it has evolved with many people's insights and comments there. So what I found interesting with Analayo's style is he was focusing on that early Buddhist materials and trying to extract content from there. So which is why I use those materials to create my own understanding here. And thanks to Ravi for exposing me to Analayo.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
what
one more point. I mean, because in the same line, see, in the Tibet, a lot of Tibetans follow Buddhism, right? They think that Dalai Lama is the living Buddha, or this thing. So the current Dalai Lama also has, written several books on this. So, has any thoughts on that? I mean, that's a little. I mean, was a little confusing for me because they think that Dalai Lama is a living Buddha and all that. How does it all relate? Was a question in my mind. So any, because you people have done a lot of research on that.
see,
Addesh, I think it's very similar to Pope in Christianity. It's just a figurehead representing that religion is what I felt.
Okay, yeah.
see again,
Could be.
Continue the tradition as a figurehead.
again, like any other religion, there are ritualistic part of it, and there is a what do you say, wisdom
Spiritual
part of it. Okay, so actually, Buddha condemned the ritualistic part of our days, those days, like sacrificing animals and those things, and he stuck to the spiritual part of it or wisdom part of it. But like any other religion, again, people who followed him opened a sect called Buddhism, and again they followed the ritualistic part of it. If you go to Tibetan thing,
Exactly.
it's very ritualistic is one thing. If you look at the painting and all those things, and also they follow all those pranayama and all those tantra, those kind of practices, which was actually negated by Buddha himself. Just because they followed him, they keep it. If you see, they chant it, all those things. Buddha said, you don't have to chant something; you live the meaning of it. That's the difference. So, if you want to see meditative part of Buddhism, it's more in Sri Lanka and Thailand, they and Burma. So they have somehow there two sects called Mahayana, and there is one more thing. I don't remember. One follows the
Theravada?
yeah, correct. Okay, so this is and also if you see Satipatana, Analayo book, he has only written about Satipatana. He has not written about anything else. In the Satipatana part, he has covered all the other aspects of Buddha and his life.
And in fact, Buddha clearly said there is nobody like Buddha outside. He said, be your own Buddha, be your own light. Is one of the most important guidance from Buddha to all of us. So that is something, if we are going to practice, if you are going to keep in mind, then the only way to be that is do the practice rather than stop at many things that we do blindly. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So then, if there are no more questions, then probably we can close our session for today, and regroup from here for the subsequent ones. Okay.
Sure, Manju.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank you very much,
day.
folks.
Bye.
Thanks for the session, Manju.
Thank you.
It is-
Thank you.